How do you think history will judge her as in any of these roles? I mean, let's take the current most urgent one of being Treasury Secretary. And I know it's hard ourselves to, go forward 10 years and look back. But in terms of her performance on the job relative to the time she's in, even compared to other Treasury secretaries, how has she done?
Well, I mean, I just think you cannot take the current inflation off the report card, which drives her nuts because she's used to prides herself on being a straight A student. It was a policy failure. It was a policy failure by the Fed. It was a policy failure by the Biden administration. And you could argue it was by the Trump administration, too, because we pumped so much money into the economy and that hurt people. So that was a stain on her record. At the same time, when you look at the post-financial crisis era, when she was at the Fed, she really pushed that institution to change the way it operated and the way it thought about unemployment and inflation in this kind of low interest rate post-crisis era. And in that environment, it looked like she was right and a lot of her critics were wrong. When she left the job, unemployment was down near 4%, inflation was very low, stock market was rising. She left the Fed with the economy in really good condition. So you can't take that off of her scorecard. What I hope to do with this book in judging anybody's record is, I think at the end of the day, we're human. I think it helps to put the political blinders aside and just kind of look at what a person does on the merits. And she made some very good calls. She became Treasury Secretary and Fed Chairman because of those good calls. And then she made some mistakes. The one other thing I think you have to say when you're talking about Janet Yellen is, and it's remarkable we're this far into the conversation and haven't said it, she broke every glass ceiling there was for a woman in a very male-dominated field. She was the only woman in her PhD class at Yale in the 1960s. She was one of very few women on faculty at Harvard in the 1970s, and they didn't offer her tenure. She was only the second woman to be chair of the Council of Economic Advisors in the White House. First woman to run the Fed, first woman to run the Treasury. So I think for a lot of women, she's a very important figure. And I think there's some interesting lessons we can learn about how she got there, how she broke these glass ceilings, which have to be a part of the story in addition to the story of, was she a good policymaker?
Anything in particular stand out that, obviously she is in a unique position in history, but do you think, and maybe feels compelled to say something about Roe v. Wade or, weigh in on issues of interest to women, but in what respect did she do things differently than any of her male peers to get to these roles?
I'd say several things do stand out about her and how she got to where she was. First of all, as a child, her mother drove her crazy.
As one does.
Her mother insisted not only that she do all of her homework, but that everything be right. And she became kind of compulsive about doing her homework. And that has defined her as a policymaker. And that's mattered in the world of economics, which is a very argumentative profession where people like to shoot down each other's ideas. People would say no one was ever more prepared for a debate than Janet Yellen. And I think that prepared her for a lot of tough debates. So that's one. There's also this idea for women in the workplace that it's important to lean in. Sheryl Sandberg coined this phrase. I think for Janet Yellen, she leaned in, but she didn't do it just to be heard because she's a woman. She leaned in when she thought she had something important to say. So when the Fed was having battles after the 2008 financial crisis, she literally pounded her fist on the table that the Fed needed to be doing more because she thought she had the right answer and she thought it mattered. She didn't lean in for the sake of leaning in.